Colorado claims the honor of holding the first rodeo, having the world's highest bridge, and the nation's longest continuous street. Its most famous mountain, Pikes Peak, is said to be the inspiration for the song America the Beautiful, including the line, "Purple Mountain Majesties." Colorado is also home to the Briar Gate Farm. It's in Longmont, just outside the city of Boulder. Briar Gate's not your typical farm. It's a goat farm. It's owned by Kate Johnson, who's not your typical farmer. When it comes to goat cheese, she's our go-to person. She runs a cheesemaking school called The Art of Cheese. Hi, Kate, or should I say howdy?
Either's fine. Hello.
And you're joined by an assistant?
Yes, this is my 16-year-old assistant, Shade.
Hi, Shade.
Hi.
I've heard cheese described as carefully rotted milk. Is that true?
Yeah, one description is it's curdled milk. It's just we're going to do it on purpose instead of waiting for it to do it accidentally.
So what's the first step to doing it on purpose?
Well, we're going to make goat cheese, which is chev or chèvre. And this is a 24-hour cheese, so I have it at all different stages. But our first step is just to heat the milk. Pretty simple. We're just going to warm it up to about room temperature. That's all there is to it. Then we're going to add some culture. And culture is just a good bacteria that we put into the milk to acidify the milk. So that's a big word, but it just means we're going to make this change its pH level and become more acidic because the culture will convert the lactose in the milk to lactic acid.
Once the milk is affected by the culture, you add an enzyme called rennet. What is that exactly?
Right, so I've already cultured this milk and I actually already enzymed it, but after I add the culture, I'm going to add the enzyme, which is going to coagulate the milk. What that means, it's going to take all those solids in the milk and pull them together so that it's no longer liquid. It's a solid. So that's the enzyme's job.
And do you typically need to wait 12 hours before the next step?
That's right. So I started this about 12 hours ago because otherwise you'd have nothing to see. And when I get to 12 hours, I have a curd. So, whoops, I poured some of the whey out. But there's curd, that's the solid parts of the milk. And then there's whey, that's the liquid part of the milk. And it just did that while I was sleeping or while I was off working. It does it all by itself once you've added those ingredients.
And then after the 12 hours, what do you do next?
Well, this is where Shade's going to come in because she's going to do this. I'm going to show her and explain to you what we're doing, but we're just going to take this little skimmer spoon and we're going to take thin little slices of this curd. Right now, this is more like yogurt than it is cheese. And so we're going to scoop it into some cheesecloth. So I'm going to have Shade do that part for you and we'll switch places.
Now, Kate, while Shade is doing that, when showing us what was in the pot, you mentioned you spilled some whey. What exactly is whey?
Yeah, so when we make cheese, we're going to end up with curds, that's the cheese, that's the solids in the milk, and whey, that's the liquid that's left over from making cheese. So you have curds and whey.
So that was what Little Miss Muffet was eating while sitting on her tuffet.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so after putting the curd on the cheesecloth, what's the next step?
Okay, so then the next step is we have to let this drain. And so to let it drain, we're going to turn this square piece of cheesecloth into a bag. And so we're going to do that by tying opposite corners together. So I'll tie the first ones, and then Shade will tie the next ones, and then hold it up, and you'll see we've created a bag of cheese. In fact, these cheeses are often referred to as bag cheeses. And now you can see it's dripping the whey, right? So it has to drip now or drain because there's too much liquid in this cheese. Remember, it's more like yogurt now, and we want it to be more solid. So we're going to just let that drain, and that's where I have this next pot. We're going to just tie it onto the handle here so that it can drip into the pot. And that way I'm catching the whey because I might want to save that whey and use it for cooking or baking or putting it in smoothies. It has a lot of protein in it, but it needs to drain for a little while. And then after about another 12 hours, that little bag will look like this. And this is our finished cheese, but we have one more step. So I'm going to have Shade hold that. We a little bit of salt, okay? So we're going to open up that bag, and we're going to add a little bit of salt. And I just have here some non-iodized sea salt. It doesn't have to be any kind of fancy salt, but we want it to be non-iodized because it'll taste better and it'll dissolve a little bit better.
Is salt only to add taste?
No, the salt actually holds several functions. It's to add taste, but it's also a preservative. And in some cheeses, it's also helping to remove even more whey. Because the difference between a really soft, creamy cheese and a harder cheese, in a lot of cases, is how much whey did you remove from the curd. So I'm going to have Shade just sprinkle like about 1/4 teaspoon on there. Not a lot, just sprinkle it over the top. And then I like to use a fork to mix that salt into the curd. So I have a fork sitting over there, and we'll just mix it right in there, and then our cheese is done. So really, most of the time, this cheese is making itself. We don't have to do very much.
That's pretty cool. Shade, is cheesemaking a hobby, or do you want to make it your career?
No, it is just a hobby, but it is a very fun thing to do, especially if you have a lot of spare time.
And what's the most challenging part of the process?
For me, I definitely struggle with making the cheese curdle properly. So definitely getting the nice, good, solid curd is really rewarding when it happens.
Well, I love cheese. I wish I could taste it. Thank you both. I now have a much greater respect for cheese.
Yes. You're welcome.
In researching this story, we discovered that Colorado claims to be where the cheeseburger was invented. But California and Kentucky also claim to have given birth to the burger topped with cheese. Guess I'll just have to chew on that for a while. For Teen Kids News, I'm Ayla.